Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going way back to ancient Greece.
Time travel.
Well, kinda. But no toga is necessary for this trip. We're going to tackle the leadership of Alexander the Great.
Ah, Alexander. A classic.
Right. And you, our listeners, sent in a ton of great stuff on him, so
A treasure trove of sources on this one.
let's dive in. This isn't just about battles won, it's what made him such a powerhouse leader. Building an empire by 30? Come on, that's impressive.
It's wild how even after 2,000 years, so much of what made him successful still applies today.
It's like he was reading a modern leadership book, except, he was kind of writing it. So let's start with Alexander's grand vision. This wasn't just a guy who liked to fight. He had this huge goal, a unified empire blending East and West.
Right, a true visionary. He wasn't thinking about the next fight, he was thinking way ahead. That long-term goal, that's what made him
And
different.
it wasn't just, we're going to conquer this land, then that land.
No, this was about legacy. Imagine being one of his soldiers. You're not just fighting a war, you're building something that'll last for centuries.
Like Steve Jobs and Apple, that whole dent in the universe idea,
Yeah.
right? But Alexander was doing it, what, centuries before?
Centuries before, he understood that power. And that's part of why he was so good at bringing people along with him.
And you've mentioned how much you admire leaders who connect with their teams, and Alexander definitely seemed to nail that.
Oh, absolutely. Take, for example, his marriage to Roxana. Now, she was a Persian princess, and this was huge.
More than a love story.
Oh, for sure. It was a power move, but a smart one. By respecting Persian customs, even marrying into royalty, he showed he wasn't just about conquest.
No, he was playing 4D chess while everyone else was doing checkers. So he's got the vision, he's building connections, but to run such a diverse empire, you have to be able to, roll with the punches a bit. How did he handle that?
Adaptability was key. He couldn't just impose Greek ways on everyone. It wouldn't work. Compare his conquest of Persia versus what he did in Egypt.
Okay, so two very different places. How do you approach them?
In Persia, he actually adopted some of their customs, even wore their clothing sometimes in his court. But in Egypt, totally different story. He presented himself as a pharaoh, respecting their existing power structures.
Fascinating. So it wasn't my way or the highway. It was about understanding the people he was leading.
Exactly, and that's huge, especially in today's world. He was flexible, but never lost sight of that big vision for unity.
He really understood the assignment.
He did, and this adaptability wasn't just about cultures either. He was a master of it on the battlefield.
Like, how so?
Well, let's talk about the Battle of Gaugamela, where he faced off against Darius III and the Persian army. You mentioned this battle in your notes. What stuck with you?
Well, I remember reading that he was totally outnumbered, yet he still crushed it. Pulled off an insane victory.
He did, and he did it by embracing unconventional tactics. Instead of a head-on attack, he went for a flanking maneuver. Risky, but it paid off big time.
Okay, hold on. Flanking. So he's basically going around the enemy.
Essentially. But he took it a step further. He intentionally left a gap in his own lines.
Wait, what? He left himself open like that. That's wild.
It was a calculated risk. See, he knew Darius would see that gap as a weakness and charge right in. And that's exactly what happened.
He used their own aggression against them. Brilliant. Talk about thinking outside the box. So we've got a brilliant strategist, but to win like that consistently, you need your people with you. How did he inspire that kind of loyalty?
Well, part of it goes back to what we were saying, that connection, right? He was charismatic, sure, but it was more than that.
So spill the tea. Was it just those cheekbones you see in the statues? What was his secret?
Maybe those helped, who knows. But seriously, it was that he led from the front lines. He wasn't some king giving orders from afar. He fought alongside his men, shared their risks, even their hardships.
Yeah, talk about leading by example.
Right, and that shared experience, it builds trust like nothing else. You're in the trenches together, that's powerful stuff.
No wonder his troops were so loyal. They knew he wasn't asking them to do anything he wouldn't do himself.
Exactly. It wasn't just about showing off his own bravery, though there was definitely some of that. It was about earning respect, proving he was with them every step of the way.
Okay, so we've got a visionary leader who adapts, inspires crazy loyalty, but he also had a reputation, right? Wasn't Alexander known for being, well, kind of ruthless when he needed to be?
Yeah, there's that other side to the coin. He understood that sometimes to maintain control, you gotta make tough choices. And not always popular ones.
When you say tough choices, give us an example. What are we talking about here?
Let's talk Thebes. This was a Greek city-state that rebelled against him.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about this. Didn't go so well for them.
No, not at all. Alexander, he shut that rebellion down hard. We're talking razed the city, sold the people into slavery. It was a statement.
Intense. So was that a purely strategic move or more about sending a message, you think?
Bit of both, probably. On a strategic level, yeah, he had to squash any uprisings, maintain order, but it was also about power, letting everyone know this is what happens if you challenge me.
A very clear message. It's kind of chilling when you think about it. There's that line, right? Between being a strong leader, decisive, and then, well, going too far.
It's a debate that continues even now among historians. When do those tough decisions for the greater good, as they say, cross over into something else? It's complicated.
No doubt. Makes you think about the weight of leadership, right? You got to make those calls, own those decisions, even when they're hard.
Exactly. And live with the consequences. We can't just gloss over this aspect of Alexander. It's part of who he was, part of his leadership story. Brilliant, yes, but also, at times, incredibly ruthless.
It's fascinating, though, how it all comes together, right? This complex picture of Alexander, inspiring, strategic, and, yeah, ruthless when he felt it was necessary.
Right. Makes you wonder, did he ever second-guess himself? Did he ever doubt his methods? Unfortunately, we just don't have the answers to those questions. We can only speculate.
It's incredible, isn't it, how Alexander's story still has this hold on us thousands of years later.
It really does. It's a testament to the power of, well, leadership, I guess.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, were great leaders like him just born that way? Or is it all about what they went through, the experiences that shaped them?
The age-old question, right?
Yeah.
Nature versus nurture. And with someone like Alexander, it's tough to say for sure. Probably a bit of both, don't you think?
Yeah, gotta be. Like, imagine having Aristotle as your tutor. Talk about a leadership coach.
Right. Can you imagine the conversations? But even with that kind of mentorship, Alexander still had to go out there and prove himself. It was the battles, the tough decisions. Those were his real-world lessons.
So true. Even with all that potential, he had to learn, adapt, make his own mistakes along the way.
Exactly. It's a good reminder for all of us. No one's born a perfect leader. It's something you work at, you stumble, you get back up.
You learn to pivot, like we were talking about before. And speaking of, those tough lessons,
Yeah.
we talked about Alexander's ruthlessness. Thebes, for example. Do those actions kind of overshadow everything else he did? How should we think about that part of his legacy?
It's a really good question and a complicated one. You can't just brush it aside. He accomplished incredible things, united huge parts of the world, left a cultural impact that we still see today.
Right, like his vision, his ambition, that was off the charts.
Absolutely. But then there's the other side. The cost of some of those victories, the brutality. We can't forget about that.
So how do we reconcile those two sides, the good and, well, the not so good?
That's the challenge, isn't it? And maybe that's the biggest lesson Alexander offers us. Not that we should aim to be exactly like him, flaws and all, but that leadership is a process. It's messy, you're going to make mistakes. It's about acknowledging that, learning from it, and always trying to be better.
Constantly evolving, right? Instead of being afraid to mess up, it's about what you do after.
Exactly. And hey, who knows? Maybe one of our listeners, inspired by Alexander's journey, will go on to do amazing things, lead in their own way.
Love that. It's about finding your own style, your own path to leadership.
And remembering, it's not a straight line to success. There are going to be bumps along the way.
Totally. Well said. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Alexander the Great, everyone. Hopefully, you've dug up some interesting insights with us today.
Always a fascinating journey back in time.
It really is. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep leading.